Revealed, how a blind billionaire discovered true love with his fiancée's unexpected best friend. Jack Parker was not just a billionaire, he was a force of nature, navigating his world of darkness with the confidence of a lion. Each morning in his luxurious penthouse overlooking Central Park, he went through his familiar routine, the soft hum of the city below, the gentle clink of polished glass against silverware as he poured his coffee. Yet, today felt different. The pain from his breakup with Amy crept into his heart, a wound that seemed to deepen with each fleeting moment that he had thought Amy was the one, the glamorous woman who danced through high society, always adorned with the latest designer labels. She embodied the life he thought he wanted until the shimmer of that world lost its glow. Jack craved something real, something with heart, a rare lens through which he could see the world without needing his sight. In the flurry of his philanthropic work, Jack found solace. He volunteered at community centers, his presence illuminating the lives of veterans and at-risk youth. It was there, amidst the unvarnished truth of human struggle, that he met Maggie. She was Amy's best friend from way back, the girl who had traded a small-town life for the chaos of the city, armed with a stethoscope and an endless supply of kindness. Maggie wasn't flashy, her strength lay in her authenticity, carving space for others while often standing quietly in the shadows. One afternoon, surrounded by laughter and chaos, as Jack distributed backpacks filled with school supplies, he heard Maggie's voice rise above the chatter. Her laughter was like music, pulling him in as they shared stories about their lives, hopes, and failures. The warmth that blossomed within him felt unfamiliar yet profoundly comforting. Jack's heart began to swell, fighting against the burden of his past. But then, just as the seed of something beautiful began to sprout, Amy reappeared, gliding effortlessly back into Jack's life like an unwanted draft. She offered a charm that was hard to resist, promising familiarity and status, things Jack could no longer identify with. He was trapped in an emotional tug-of-war, the magnetic pull of his past versus the intoxicating promise of a future with Maggie. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension thickened as Jack found himself on the precipice of decision, his thoughts a swirling tempest. But just when he thought he had clarity, a shocking revelation about Maggie surfaced, sending him spiraling. Sitting alone amidst the city's cacophony, he felt the weight of his choices suffocating him. Could he fight through the noise? Was he ready to embrace love that defied societal norms, all while confronting uncomfortable truths about himself and what he truly valued? The answer remained elusive. The clock ticked on, with it came a sense of urgency that gripped Jack tighter than ever. One truth loomed: love might lie not in wealth or recognition, but in the profound connection he yearned for amidst the chaos. As he faced these gut-wrenching choices, one question pulsated through his mind: could he dare to choose the path towards true love, even if it meant edging further away from who he once was? Jack leaned heavily against the cool glass of his window, feeling the familiar vibrations of the city pulse beneath him. Below, taxis honked incessantly, and pedestrians rushed, lives intertwined in a chaotic ballet. Yet here he was, isolated in his worry, his mind reeling from the new details about Maggie that had unsettled him. He thought back to the moment Amy had dropped the bombshell, her words echoing in his ears like a haunting melody he couldn't shake. "You know, Maggie wasn't just a nurse, she used to date someone in our circle. Someone big." That simple revelation threatened to unravel everything he felt in those fleeting hours spent with Maggie. Just as he dared to believe he could embrace something genuine, a shadow of doubt crept in, taunting him. Could he look at her the same way now? Was the connection they nurtured merely a cruel trick of fate, bound to be overshadowed by Maggie's past? As his breath quickened, Jack's heart gave a thud. He felt crushed under the weight of his own thoughts. But there was also a flicker of rebellion, a desire to shake off the shackles of societal judgment that had governed him for too long. Wasn't he love supposed to transcend all the complexities of past relationships and social rankings? Chiding himself, he closed his eyes and thought of Maggie. Her laughter, her kindness, they drifted to him like whispers of hope. He remembered the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about helping the kids at the center. Life had not always been kind to her, but she faced it with a resilience that both intrigued and inspired him. How could he let anything stand in the way of that connection? He turned, pacing his penthouse as uncertainty turned into determination. He couldn't let Amy dictate who he should or shouldn't be with. It was his life, he had to live it authentically. But moving forward meant risking rejection, and that terrified him. Jack. It was Maggie's voice, pulling him from his thoughts. He rushed to the door as she entered, her presence filling the room with warmth. There was a light about her, and as her eyes found his, the tension in his chest began to ease. He felt the urge to reach out, to assure her that he would figure everything out. Just then, the doorbell chimed. It was Amy. His heart sank. This couldn't be happening. Why now? He shot Maggie a quick glance, finding her already looking back at him, a question in her eyes mirroring his fears. Hey, is everything okay? She asked, concern knitting her brows. Yeah, everything's fine, Jack replied, forcing a smile, but could he really reassure her when inside, he was screaming? He didn't want another conversation with Amy. He needed to talk to Maggie, to chase that connection into something real. The door swung open, and Amy's familiar voice floated into the room. Jack, darling. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Maggie shifted uncomfortably, her expression shifting to one of uncertainty. Jack felt the air grow thicker, the weight of expectation crashing over him. Everything hinged on this moment, and yet he felt like he was teetering on a cliff. Could he find the courage to protect what was blossoming with Maggie? Or would he let the past choke out the possibility of something extraordinary? With everything on the line, Jack took a deep breath, ready to confront what came next. Jack stood rooted in place as Amy breezed into the room, radiating a confidence that felt misplaced in the tension-filled air. Maggie stood inches away, her eyes darting between the two of them, uncertainty painting her features. Jack could see the confusion swirling in her gaze, and he longed to bridge that space, to dispel the shadow that Amy had cast with her mere presence. Would you like some wine, Amy? Jack's voice came out steadier than he felt. Oh, Jack. You know me too well. Amy had already beelined for the kitchen, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She didn't even notice how Maggie's shoulders tightened, a subtle cue of discomfort that was impossible to ignore. Jack looked at Maggie, who seemed to be contemplating an escape route. Her expression was painted with fleeting doubt, and he couldn't let that image linger. Hey, he said softly, walking closer to her. Let's not let her ruin this moment, okay? Maggie bit her lip, glancing at the doorway Amy had occupied. It's just she knows so much about you. More than I do, I mean. Or maybe she doesn't know what truly matters, he countered, taking a step closer. Whatever this is between us, it's real. I want to know you. Not the labels or the past, just you. She seemed to hold her breath as she stared into his eyes, vulnerability dancing across her face. He could see the resolve start to build, but it was interrupted by Amy's return, a glass of red wine in hand, prominently cheerful. Maggie blinked, and the moment drifted away like smoke. So, Jack, have you two been bonding over life's great mysteries? Amy asked, a teasing lilt in her tone that made Jack bristle. Something like that, Jack said, forcing a smile. But inside, he was yelling. Why couldn't Amy see that this wasn't just a casual chat? I was just telling Maggie about the gala next week. You should totally come, Maggie. Amy's sing-song voice broke through Jack's thoughts, and he could feel the tension starting to return. He had half a mind to protest, to speak up for Maggie, but he hesitated. Maggie's eyes flared with uncertainty again. I don't know if that's a good idea, she said, her voice small. Jack felt a surge of anger. Did she not see how amazing she was? Maggie, you should absolutely come. You belong there, as much as anyone. Oh, please. It'll be fun. Amy interjected, undeterred. A night of fabulous people. You won't even have to think about the past. Jack's heart sank at those words. Was that how Amy saw it all? As if everyone could just wipe the slate clean and pretend the past didn't exist? He felt a surge of protectiveness for Maggie. Actually, I think she'd prefer to define her own experiences rather than just forget what has happened, he said, locking eyes with Maggie. Right? Maggie glanced at him, and a glimmer of confidence seemed to awaken in her expression. Yeah, I think I'd rather do that. I'd rather be where I'm appreciated, not just where it looks good on social media. The air grew heavy with unspoken tension, and Amy's expression dropped a notch as she tried to recalibrate. Jack felt an electric thrill at Maggie's words. It was a start, a grounding in this chaotic scene. Perhaps they could navigate through this whirlwind together. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew the fight wasn't over. Amy rolled her eyes, an exasperated laugh slipping out. Oh, come on, it's just a party. Don't overthink it. But Jack already knew, tonight wasn't just another party. It was a crossroads, a potential turning point. As he scanned Maggie's face, a burning question lingered in the air: would they both dare to step forward together, past the obstacles for the chance at something genuine? He stepped back, waiting for Maggie's response, the moment stretched taut with possibility. Just then, a loud crash resonated from the living room, a heavy thud followed by silence that screamed for attention. What was that? Maggie whispered, eyes wide with surprise. His heart raced. Whatever it was, they were about to find out, and it could change everything. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, drowning out the chatter of the party and the sugary notes of Amy's laughter from the kitchen. The heavy thud echoed in his mind like an urgent alarm, pulling him away from the fragile moment he had been building with Maggie. She looked up at him, her brow furrowing with a mix of fear and curiosity, and he felt a surge of protective instinct wash over him. Let me check it out, he said, not waiting for her response. Jack stepped into the hallway, the sound of clinking glasses and chatter fading behind him. The tension of the moment burned brighter, crackling in the air as he approached the living room. The room was dimly lit, and for a moment, all he could see were shadows dancing along the walls. Then he spotted a figure sprawled against the coffee table. A large stack of books had toppled over, trailing paperbacks and hardcovers like fallen soldiers. David! Jack blurted out, rushing forward. David, a friend who had always been a bit of a klutz, was trying to disentangle himself from the mess. Hey man, just testing my gymnastic skills, nothing to worry about. He said, a lopsided grin splitting his face. Jack let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Looks like your skills need some work, Jack teased, shaking his head as he helped David to his feet. But even as he chuckled, a weight settled back onto his shoulders. It had momentarily distracted him, but now, the reality of the night came rushing back: the tension with Amy, and the uncertainty with Maggie. Did you see the look on her face? David tried to catch his breath, still chuckling softly. I thought for sure she'd run out screaming. By the way, is she around? I thought I saw her with you. Yeah, she's in the other room, Jack said absently, glancing over his shoulder towards where Maggie had stood just moments before. He could picture that fleeting spark of confidence in her eyes, and he felt a pang of longing for it to return. Dude, you need to bring her out here, seriously. This party needs a little heat, and I'm not talking about my epic fall. David nudged him playfully. Jack nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The way Maggie had looked earlier, brave yet unsure, it stayed with him, beckoning him to act. He wanted to tell her it was okay, that she mattered more than any shallow party or extravagant gala. Right, I'll get her, Jack said, determination settling in. The night wasn't over. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning an opportunity to show Maggie what she meant to him amidst all the noise and chaos. That he took a deep breath and made his way back to the kitchen, where Amy was sipping wine and gossiping louder than before, her voice cutting like glass through the warm room. "You guys are missing all the fun. Seriously, how do you two even know each other?" "Maggie, let us go to the living room," Jack said, finding his voice more confident than before. Her eyes lit up at his invitation, but a flicker of hesitation remained. Maybe I'm good here," she started, but Jack stepped closer, filled with a fire that chased away his earlier doubts. "No, I need you out there. I want everyone to see how amazing you really are." He spoke with passion he didn't hold back. "You deserve that. Come on, with me." Maggie hesitated for a heartbeat, then took a deep breath, and something shifted within her. "Okay," she said quietly, but there was a new strength in her words. They walked side by side, and as they crossed into the living room, Jack's heart raced with anticipation, but as they stepped into the vibrant space filled with laughter and chatter, Amy's voice cut through again. "Well, look who decided to join us. Finally." The warmth that had been building faltered for just a moment, tension knitting itself in the air once more. Jack forced a smile, glancing at Maggie. Her expression was a mix of determination and uncertainty, just like his. What would happen now? Would they stand strong together, or would the storm of insecurity tear them apart? It felt like the night was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. And then, as the sounds of the party swirled around them, Jack noticed something that sent a chill down his spine. A look shared across the room, one that brewed something dark. The connection between Amy and another guest sparked unsettling thoughts. What if tonight's revelations went deeper than just confidence? Maggie's gaze caught his, uncertainty rippling across her face again. Jack's heart raced. Would this night reveal the hidden truths they all feared? Jack's eyes flicked back to Amy, who was laughing way too hard at something someone had just said on the other side of the room. The carefree bubble of their gathering threatened to burst as tension prickled in the air. He turned toward Maggie, trying to catch her gaze. She stood there, her posture stiffening as the laughter around them felt more like judgment than joy. "Maybe this wasn't such a good idea," she murmured, the confidence she mustered beginning to dim under the scrutiny of bright eyes and louder voices. "No," Jack said, stepping closer. "You belong here. Just ignore her." He could sense the weight of unease pulling Maggie down. He wanted so badly to lift her out of it, just like he had this evening. Somehow, they'd gotten here together tonight, and he hoped they could find something real amid the chaos. For a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the room. Then came David's voice, booming back into the space. "Hey, everyone. Let us see some dance moves." He gestured animatedly, clearly wanting to shift the attention away from the tension. "Maggie, do you like to dance?" Jack asked, hoping for a glimmer of joy in her eyes. She hesitated, glancing at the crowd, but he sensed the spark he'd seen before fighting to ignite. "I guess I could try," she said, almost shyly, her smile returning. "If you're willing to embarrass yourself with me." As they made their way to the center of the living room, Jack felt a swell of pride. Here they were, two unlikely dancers, letting the music guide them. At first, they were clumsy, laughter bubbling up between them as they tried to find their rhythm. Maggie's laughter was bright, and it filled him with hope. It was then that Jack noticed Amy eyeing them from across the room. The smile never left her face, but there was something sharper in her expression. He exchanged a glance with David, who was lost in his own dance, oblivious to the weight settling around Amy. Inexplicably, the upbeat music slipped into a slow tone. Jack instinctively reached for Maggie's hand, pulling her closer. The world around them faded, and all Jack could focus on was the warmth that enveloped them. He could see the spark in her eyes return, alive and bright, as if the music had awakened everything she'd concealed. They swayed together, oblivious to the rest of the party. Maggie looked up at him, her expression shifting from uncertainty to something deeper. "You're really an easy guy to trust," she said softly. "Trust is a big deal," he replied, feeling an unusual heaviness in his chest. It's built through moments like this. But their moment was interrupted as Amy marched toward them, her voice cutting through the soft music. "Jack! Why don't you introduce your friend to everyone?" she said with an edge that drew the eyes of the party guests. The air turned thick with expectation. Jack felt Maggie stiffen beside him. The music faded, replaced by the rising chatter, and he could almost hear the whispers growing like an angry tide. It was as if the world around him was demanding a choice, a verdict on where this night stood. "Yeah, maybe we should," he began, but his words hung heavy. Was it really the right time? Would this moment shatter? Maggie shot him a look, uncertainty ghosting across her face again. Maybe it's not a good idea after all. But then he noticed Amy's smirk, and a protective instinct flared up inside him. "No," he said firmly. "Maggie is special, and everyone needs to know that." With her hands still linked with his, Jack took a step forward. The room quieted, all eyes on them. He felt the weight of the moment shift. Would this declaration push them deeper or tear them apart? And just as this tension spiraled around them, a quiet voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What will you choose, Jack?" The unsteady ground beneath him trembled, and as he prepared to reveal Maggie, a knock echoed from the front door, fracturing the moment. What more would intrude upon their fragile night? Jack's heart raced at the sudden knock, the sound piercing through the charged air like a thunderclap. It felt as if the whole party held its breath, frozen in uncertainty. He glanced back at Maggie, her eyes wide, filled with an uncertainty that mirrored his own. The room was alive with whispers and stares directed at them, judging, evaluating, as if their fates rested in the stranger's hands. "Should I?" Maggie began, but Jack shook his head slightly, holding her gaze. No matter what happened next, he needed her to know she mattered, that this moment was theirs. He focused on the door, an impulsive urge to take control propelling him forward. "I'll get it," he murmured, squeezing her hand gently before stepping away. The crowd felt suffocating, but the impending sense of disruption pulled him toward the door like a magnet that he pulled the door open, revealing an unexpected face. A lanky guy stood there, dressed in a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans, looking more like he'd just rolled out of bed than arrived at a party. "Hey, man. Sorry I'm late." "Oh, is this a bad time?" His voice sounded bright and carefree, a jarring contrast to the atmosphere inside. Jack blinked, feeling the relief wash over him for a brief moment. "Not at all." "Come on in," he offered, stepping aside. Just as he did, Maggie appeared behind him, her pace instinctive as she tried to understand the sudden interruption. "Maggie, this is," Jack started, but Amy's impatience clawed through the air. "Do we need another random person here?" she snapped from across the room, pulling everyone's attention back to her and away from the newcomer. Jack felt a deep sigh building in his chest. "Actually, yes," he said, stepping closer to Maggie, reclaiming their moment. "Everyone deserves a chance to be heard tonight." The crowd buzzed, intrigued despite themselves. Maggie shifted nervously, caught in the web of shifting dynamics. Through the haze of confusion, Jack could see the spark of bravery flicker in her eyes again, and it tethered him to hope. The new guy tripped over the threshold, stumbling forward, his grin widening as he regained his footing. "What's the occasion? Is it a dance-off?" "Because I'm ready to lose." Old comfort settled back into the room, the humor gradually melting the tension. Laughter punctuated the air, and Jack was grateful for it. "Actually, it was more of a let me introduce Maggie to everyone moment," he said firmly, this time turning to Amy, whose flustered expression was beginning to sour. "Maggie is not just my date, she's someone special." The change in energy was palpable. Those at the party shifted, their eyes darting between Jack and Maggie, curiosity piqued. Amy's jaw tightened. She put on her best smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Right. Well, let us see what this Maggie has to offer then," she said, her voice dripping with faux enthusiasm. Jack felt a spark of defiance rise within him. Maggie is more than a what? She's a person. And this isn't about one-upmanship. This is just about having a good time together. He turned to her, feeling the magnetic pull of honesty. They should see how incredible you are, he whispered, a steadiness in his voice that he hoped would bolster her, and then, out of nowhere, Maggie stepped forward, empowered. Yeah, I'd love to dance. She smiled, bright and genuine. Jack felt something inside him shift as they rejoined the rhythmic pulse of the music. As they began to move together once more, the rhythm wrapping around them, he felt the energy of the party recalibrating. Laughter returned, and feet began to shuffle, pulling people back into the light. It was all so fleeting, but Jack held on to that moment. He hoped they could weather any storm. Yet even as they laughed and danced, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. What would Amy say or do next? Would she let it go, or would she strike back? He could feel the impending shift hanging in the air like a heavy cloud, promising more than just conflict. Would they be able to stand as one, or would this party tear them apart? The music thumped, setting a lively backdrop that tried to drown out the tension lingering in the corners of the room. Jack felt exhilaration course through him as he lost himself in Maggie's laughter, a sweet sound that had the ability to lift even the heaviest spirits. They danced, weaving through the crowd, the world around them melting into a blur. It was magic, pure and simple. But amidst the joy, Jack noticed Amy's tight demeanor from across the room. She stood with crossed arms, her eyes darting between them and the newcomer, who was busy cracking more jokes, blissfully unaware. Jack's heart sank slightly. He wanted this night to be about connection and joy, not overshadowed by lingering animosity. Maggie caught his gaze, her brow furrowing in concern. Is everything okay? She asked, her voice barely audible over the pulsating beats. Jack forced a smile. Yeah, just keeping an eye on the vibe. He tried to brush it off, but the knot in his stomach wouldn't loosen. Suddenly, Amy pushed her way through the crowd, her bright red lipstick and tight clothing striking against the lighter colors and carefree attitudes around her. She stopped right in front of Jack and Maggie, the air around her charged. Hey, everyone! She called out, her voice cutting through the music. Let's give Maggie a round of applause for daring to join this party. The words dripped with sarcasm. The scattered applause that followed felt half-hearted, a mix of awkwardness and forced enthusiasm. Jack clenched his fist, feeling the urge to protect Maggie rise within him. This was not how it was supposed to go. Thanks, Amy. Jack stepped forward, his voice steady. But I think she deserves more than just a cheap applause. Why don't you let her show us what she can really do? Maggie glanced at Jack, a question in her eyes, while the music slowed, almost as if sensing the tension. The crowd shifted closer, drawn in by the brewing confrontation. Really? Amy tilted her head, a smirk dancing on her lips. You think she can handle the spotlight? Maybe you really don't know her after all. Jack's heart pounded. This wasn't just about Maggie, it felt personal now. I do know her, he said firmly, searching Maggie's eyes for reassurance. More than you realize. The room fell into a hushed silence, and he took a step toward Amy. This isn't about you or anyone else forming judgments. It's about who we are. Who Maggie is. So let's give her that chance. The newcomer, sensing the rising tension, interjected, really, let's just let loose. How about a dance-off? He threw in a few moves, his carefree attitude trying to lighten the mood, and a couple of chuckles broke the tension. Maggie hesitated for a moment, a flicker of doubt clouding her expression. But Jack squeezed her hand again, whispering, "You've got this." With a determined nod, she stepped forward, heart pounding with uncertainty yet ignited with the resolve to show everyone who she truly was. The music shifted again, now fast and energizing, urging them to move. Jack fell into step with her, mirroring her every move. The initial cheers transformed into supportive chants, the crowd rallying for Maggie. With every beat, as she danced, Maggie shone brighter, the dimness that had clung to her slipping away like shadows before morning light. She lost herself in the rhythm, lifting the spirits of those around her. But as Maggie dazzled, Jack's gaze remained on Amy, still watching, a fierce storm gathering behind her eyes. What was she plotting next? As the night continued to unfold, Jack knew something was brewing, something that could change everything for them both. Would Maggie's light be enough to fend off the dark? He swallowed hard, the weight of uncertainty settling back in. Would they make it to the end of the night without further fallout? Or would this party push them into a battle neither of them were prepared to fight? The energy in the room pulsed around them as Maggie danced, her confidence rising with every cheers she received. It was as if the rhythm was setting her free, the troubles from earlier slipping away. Jack couldn't help but feel pride swell in his chest. She was radiant, her laughter blending effortlessly with the music, and the crowd's excitement only bolstered her spirit, but Amy's simmering discontent pulled at Jack like a dark cloud. He scanned her face, looking for a sign of what she'd do next. Each beat of the music seemed to amplify the tension, and despite the cheers surrounding them, the atmosphere felt heavy. He could sense that whatever confrontation was brewing wouldn't wait for the dance floor to clear. "Come on, Maggie. Show us what you've got," shouted someone in the crowd, and Maggie launched into a dazzling spin that caused everyone to erupt in applause once more. Jack, feeling the connection between them, slipped closer, his heart warmed by her joy. He was about to say something to encourage her when Amy stepped in, cutting through the moment. "Wow, Maggie, look at you," Amy called out with a voice so saccharine it made Jack's skin crawl. "But can you really call it dancing when you're just flailing around?" The laughter from her words turned the supportive crowd. Jack's chest tightened. He knew he couldn't just stand there and let this happen. "Hey! That's not fair," he shouted back, his voice rising above the bubbling chatter. Maggie glanced back, uncertainty flickering in her eyes, and Jack reached for her hand. "Just focus on the music, okay? Ignore her." Maggie nodded slightly, determination refilling her spirit. She resumed dancing, a fierce joy lighting up her features, but Jack noticed how her light dimmed every time Amy's voice pierced through the fun. "But you've got to admit," Amy persisted, "Jack's really your only fan now. Isn't it sad that you need him to give you a confidence boost? What would you do without him?" The crowd's energy shifted again, whispers mixing with the music as they buzzed with anticipation. Jack felt his blood boil. None of this was right. Maggie was strong, talented. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone. "Enough, Amy," Jack snapped, stepping between her and Maggie. "You don't get to belittle her just because you're jealous." A hush fell over the crowd. Eyes turned to Amy, who met Jack's gaze with a simmering coldness. "Jealous? Please. I'm just looking out for our friend here. Someone has to keep her grounded." The harshness of her words hit hard, like an unexpected punch to the gut. Jack knew that wasn't true. This wasn't friend-like behavior, it was poison. "Maggie, you don't need her approval. You're amazing on your own," Jack exclaimed, his voice penetrating the tension-tinged air. Maggie's eyes sparkled with a mix of gratitude and surprise. For a moment, the noise around them faded as she held his gaze. Did she see what he saw? Just then, the music shifted to a slow song, casting a warm hue across the room. The energy curling around them softened as if the crowd had forgotten the previous storm. "Dance with me?" Jack asked, extending his hand toward Maggie, his heart high with hope. Maggie hesitated, glancing back at Amy, who stood crossed-armed, lips pursed in disapproval. "Don't let her hold you back," Jack said quietly, his voice low and sincere. With a determined nod, Maggie took his hand. As they began to sway to the music, Jack felt the collective gaze of the crowd shift back to them, the earlier hostility fading into cheers once more, but just then, Amy's voice rang out, slicing through the tender moment. "Oh, Please, this is just embarrassing. The laughter around her felt sharper now, a knife hidden in a joke, and Jack felt the walls closing in. Could they both rise above this darkness? Would the night end with hurtful words echoing in their ears, or could their bond shine bright enough to push any chaos aside? As he held Maggie close, his heartbeat synced with hers, Jack knew the journey ahead might be perilous. Which way would they turn next? The soft sway of the music wrapped around Jack and Maggie, almost sheltering them from the chaos that Amy was stirring. Jack's heart thudded in rhythm with the song, a steady reminder of the warmth he felt with Maggie in his arms. Her smile, though slightly tinged with uncertainty, was enough to dispel the harsh words thrown by Amy. He wanted nothing more than to preserve this moment, to protect it from the biting sharpness of jealousy. As he held her tighter, Maggie's laughter rang out, a sweet sound that seemed to drown out the laughter from Amy's corner. Yet, Jack couldn't shake off the feeling that Amy was lurking, ready to unleash more venom. He glanced over at her, only to find her smirking and whispering to a couple of girls nearby, who giggled in response, eyes occasionally flickering to Jack and Maggie. "Just focus on us," Jack whispered, lowering his face closer to hers. "Forget about everything else." Maggie nodded, her expression softening. "Okay, I'll try." As they danced, Jack couldn't help but see how beautifully Maggie moved, her body instinctively catching every beat of the song. He wanted her to know how truly gifted she was, and how much more than a friend he wanted to be in her life. But the moment felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter with the wrong word. Suddenly, Amy's voice cut through their bubble again. "Maggie, are you really going to waste your night with him? You should be having fun, not playing the role of a backup dancer." The crowd's reactions shifted, a mix of murmurs and laughter spilling from their lips. Jack felt his heart drop. He had to stand up for Maggie, but he also had to be careful not to escalate things further. "You really need to stop, Amy," he said, trying to keep his tone steady. "Why?" "It's the truth." She snapped back. Maggie pulled away slightly, the hurt evident in her youthful features. Jack felt as if someone had taken a nail and driven it into his chest. The night that was once filled with hope and the thrill of connection was now veering into uncomfortable territory. "Maggie," he said softly, taking a step closer, closing the distance. "Don't listen to her. You're doing great. Look at how much fun everyone is having." I just don't want to be the center of attention," Maggie replied, her voice wavering ever so slightly. "What if I mess up? Everyone gets nervous, but that's part of the dance." "You just have to embrace it," he said, squeezing her hand gently, hoping to pass some of his unwavering support to her, though he could feel his own tension mounting. At that moment, a flicker of light crossed Maggie's face, the ghost of a smile, perhaps. Jack wished he could capture it forever. "Let us take a break from this." He nodded toward the side of the dance floor. As they stepped away, the noise of the crowd faded into the backdrop. They found a small nook near a wall adorned with colorful lights, a welcome retreat from the tempest surrounding them. "Maggie," he said, catching her gaze, "you're not just a dancer. You're so much more. You bring light into every room." "Do you really think so?" She breathed, her eyes shimmering, searching his face for the truth. "I know so," Jack replied firmly. But as the music faded into silence, the air thickened with the unsaid. He could feel the changing tides, the weight of their shared vulnerability pulling them closer. But with Amy's cruel shadow still lingering, would they have the strength to push past it? Suddenly, a loud commotion erupted on the dance floor, drawing their attention. And when Jack turned back to Maggie, she wasn't looking at him anymore. Instead, her eyes widened in shock. "What now?" he asked, anxiety creeping in. Across the room, Amy was in the spotlight, a sinister gleam in her eyes. "You think you can just take her away from me? Let us see how she fares when I expose the truth." Jack's heart raced. What truth could Amy possibly reveal? Would it tear Maggie down again? As the entire crowd shifted their attention, Jack felt the walls closing in once more, his instincts flaring. They weren't safe yet. In fact, the fight had only just begun. What would happen next? Let us go. Jack squeezed Maggie's hand, pulling her away from the chaos. Every heartbeat echoed the urgency to shield her from the storm Amy had begun brewing. They maneuvered through the crowd, which was still buzzing with excitement over Amy's taunts, but cracks of uncertain murmurs began to punctuate the atmosphere. Jack, please, I can't. Maggie's voice trembled, tears glistening in her eyes. Jack's heart broke a little more with each word she struggled to speak. No, Maggie, he said softly but firmly, stopping to face her. You can. You have to believe in yourself. You shine brighter than you know. Maggie's gaze flicked to the crowd, her confidence wavering like a candle in a harsh wind. But what if they don't see that? Jack reached out, lifting her chin gently. They will. If you stand strong, they will see you for who you truly are. You don't need Amy's approval. You are not defined by her. You're beautiful, kind, and strong. Now let us show that to everyone. With the knot of tension in his chest tightening, he pulled them back toward the dance floor, where whispers fluttered like unsettled butterflies. Yet he couldn't ignore the icy glare Amy shot their way, like a predator stalking prey. Hey, Maggie. Heard you can't dance without your rich boyfriend holding your hand. Amy shouted, her voice slicing through the chatter again. The crowd shifted uneasily, the anticipation thick enough to taste. Maggie belongs on her own stage, Jack shot back, surprise coursing through him at his own growing resolve. Maggie held her breath, eyes wide. He stepped slightly in front of her, a shield against the onslaught. Dance. Show them. Grappling with her conflicting emotions, Maggie took a breath and took a step forward, then another, freeing herself from indecision. The music thrummed in the background, and the crowd, sensing her courage, quieted down. Jack felt the palpable tension shift from anxiety to a wild anticipation. Gradually, Maggie found her groove, her movements growing bolder with every beat. Jack joined her, mirroring her moves, laughter bubbling between them, chasing away the shadows Amy cast. Cheers erupted, rising like a tide drowning out Amy's bitterness. Jack watched as Maggie's face transformed, her smile igniting like fireworks under the night sky, but before they could savor this triumph, Amy's voice crescendoed again, sharp and looming. Let us not forget that Maggie isn't just a shy girl, she's played the field with a lot of guys in our circle before showing up here. Jack's fists clenched. Those words were meant to slice through their joy, and they stung. But a wave of bravery washed over him and he refused to let Amy's bitterness taint Maggie's moment. Enough. Jack stepped forward, the room hanging on the edge of silence as he faced Amy head-on. Maggie isn't defined by her past. She's incredible more than you can possibly understand. And it's so sad to see you trying to bring her down just to make yourself feel bigger. The crowd murmured. This was at the decisive moment. Would they rally around Maggie, or would Amy's poison seep through the joy of the night? With newfound strength and fire, Maggie spoke, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I've had struggles, just like everyone else. But that doesn't make me less worthy or less capable. I am here, and I am stronger than your words. Jack's heart swelled as he watched her take a step forward, her courage filling the void that Amy's malice tried to occupy. The crowd responded with echoes of support, clapping and cheering her on, celebrating the undeniable truth that Maggie was no mere afterthought. The urgency in Jack's chest transformed into hope. This was more than just a dance, it was a statement. It was an affirmation of everything Maggie was, everything they shared, and it transcended Amy's bitter grasp on their night. Then, in the heart of the storm, Jack turned to Maggie, lowering his voice only for her. No matter what comes next, we face it together. The music swelled, transforming judgment into celebration, and all he saw was her. Their connection pulsed. Like a heartbeat, a bright light cutting through the remnants of darkness. As they danced, they were not alone anymore. The warmth of the crowd wrapped around them, willing them forward. Amy stood on the sideline, no longer the focal point of the night. It was time for clarity, for laughter, for love that flourished against all odds. Jack realized there was nothing left to fear, not when they stood together. They had embraced their light and pushed through the shadows, and he knew that they would continue to carve their path, unyielding and bright, and at that moment, both Jack and Maggie understood they had found something truly authentic, fiercely unwavering. As the music surged, they moved as a force, love and resilience radiating between them, a bond that would carry them forward. The crowd erupted into cheers, and all Amy could do was watch as Jack Parker and Maggie shone against the backdrop of absolute truth, love that defies expectations. Now was their time. To all viewers, this is your moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories unveiling true connections and transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these incredible stories coming. Every click matters. Comment your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. Your thoughts mean everything. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see the transformative power of love and courage. Don't wait not even one more second to spread this joy. Only true fans truly understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.